Hey everybody, this video is going to be all about how to approach your certification test for VITA. I'm going to break this up into two parts. The first couple minutes are simply going to be how to access the certification exam website, how to get into an account, create an account or get into yours. And then the second part will be conceptually how to approach the test, how to use the resources that are available to you to take the test, and go from there. So you may only need to watch part of this video, especially if you're a veteran volunteer. You may only want to watch the first part here. Okay, so starting with actually working with the certification exam website and getting into your account. I am currently on the certification exam website here. That's what we're looking at. The link to this is www.linklearncertification.com. There is a link to this in the email that you received where you found the link to this video. Once you're here, veteran volunteers first. Veteran volunteers, you should have your login name and password from last year. Now, this is a different username and password from the Practice Lab and from TaxSlayer Live. Okay, so totally different from the Practice Lab and different from the username and password that you use to get into TaxSlayer when you're volunteering on site. This is a different password. It's also another password that Jackie, Michelle, and I do not have any control over. We can't reset it, and we don't know it, unfortunately. I wish we did. So what that means is if you're a veteran volunteer, you should have this information from last year. If you do, great, type it in, hit login. If you don't, hit forgot password, and follow the prompts. Follow the prompts to enter your email and get reset your password and username that way. Okay, new volunteers, you're going to create a new account, and you can use this create account button here to do that. First thing you want to do, hit VITA Volunteer. If you're a site coordinator, hit yes. If you're not a site coordinator, hit no. Nobody here is an instructor, an IRS territory manager. And then everybody's going to say yes, that they plan to volunteer with VITA. Your training source will be publication 4491. Fill in your first name, last name. Nobody needs an SEID. Create a login, a username, create your password, put your email address in, put your home address in. Select your time zone. For new volunteers, the number of years you volunteered is 0. If anybody would like continuing education credits, if you're a CPA, an EA, or an attorney, and you'd like continuing education credits for volunteering with VITA, you can enter. Also, non-credentialed other tax return preparers can get continuing education credits as well. So pick your professional status. If you have a PTIN, put that in, and you can get continuing education credits for doing this. Once all that's entered, hit register, and that will take you into your account. Make sure you write your username and password down. You'll need it. And I'm just going to stress this again. This is a different login password from the Practice Lab. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and log in. All right, so once we are logged in, you're going to default here to the basic sequence. Okay, if you are going for advanced, simply click over here to the advanced tab. If you're doing basic, stay on basic. If you're doing advanced, switch over to advanced. Everybody, regardless if you're doing basic or advanced, will start with two tests that you have to take. The first is the volunteer standards of conduct. You can think of this as the ethics part. And then the second one is the intake and interview and quality review exam. So you have to do this sequentially. You have to do ethics first, then the intake and interview before you get to the tax law part of the certification. You're going to see one thing that I have that will be different from most people here is the site coordinator training. If you're not a site coordinator, you will not see this and you will not have to do it. If you are a site coordinator, you should see it and you should do it. And then the next piece will be either your basic exam, or if I click back over here to advanced, you'd have standards of conduct, intake and interview, and then advanced. And you do need to do those sequentially. Okay, now starting to think about this kind of conceptually, how to utilize the materials that you have available for you. We're going to start with the standards of conduct exam. So everybody received this publication. This is the paper copy of the certification test, publication 6744. We recommend doing and answering the questions on paper first. So what do I mean by that? I'm going to scroll down here and I'm going to go to my volunteer standards of conduct test questions. This is the ethics part. This is the first thing you need to do. What we recommend is going into your book, reading the questions here. You can see the first questions in the ethics part is prior to working at a VITA site, all VITA volunteers must, and then your options there. So we recommend answering it. Circle your answer in your book. Go through, answer questions 1 through, I believe there's 10 questions. Yes, there's 10 questions. Use your book, go through, answer them. Before you log into the website and enter them. So do that first. Now, you might be wondering, how am I supposed to know this? We haven't talked about this stuff in enough detail. There's no training on this. And you make an excellent point. You will find in the email about this video and about the certification test, you will find a link to publication 4961. This is the Volunteer Standards of Conduct and Ethics Training. So this is a short little training all about the ethics of volunteering with VITA. So again, you will find a link to this. There is no paper copy of this unless you print it out. You're going to find a link, click on it, and you can use this publication to help you answer the questions on the ethics test. What I would recommend is get your paper copy of your test, your 6744. Get your paper copy of this out. Pull your computer up. Open the link to the ethics training. And as you go through the test, utilize this ethics training to find your answers. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the test, back to the paper version of the test. And I don't know why my computer is kind of minimized the screen a little bit, but back to the paper version of the test. So I can point another important thing out here. Volunteer standards of conduct test questions. We already talked about that, right? We have, this is the ethics test. We have questions 1 through 10. And that's the test. There are 10 questions in the test. Now you may wonder, if I go to the next page here, What's the retest? What are they talking about here? The retest questions, the volunteer standards of conduct retest questions. You'll see there's another 10 questions here. Do you need to answer those? Well, first thing I'd like to point out is these questions are very similar to the first 10 questions. They're just worded a little bit differently. It might be a true false answer instead of a multiple choice. It might be flipped around a little bit, but they're very, very similar. So we suggest answering them. So when you do your ethics portion, do the first 10 and then do the second 10, do the retest also. You might ask why. You only need 10 questions. Well, let me go back here to the certification exam website. Now, this is where you're going to ultimately enter your answers so that they can be scored. When I actually go in here to enter my answers, the certification website is going to pull questions, half from the retest and half from the first test. Okay, so you can think of this as kind of like test A and test B, where in the ethics test, you have test A, you have test B, and when you go to enter your answers, the website is going to pull half of the questions that you need to answer from test A and half from test B. So if you already have all of your answers worked out, all you're doing is transplanting your answer from your book into the certification website. And I'll show you, I'm just going to open this. I've already kind of started it. I'm going to click on standards of conduct. I'm going to hit launch and I'm going to hit start assessment. Okay, and here is my first question. Prior to working at a VITA site, all volunteers need to. This is a question from test A, the test questions, the first set of questions in your, there it is, that's the exact question. Okay. So if you have all your answers worked out, this will be an easy kind of just taking the answers you have from the paper test, just putting them online. And you'll go through, you'll answer all of these, and then you'll submit it and get your grade. You do need an 80% to pass. You need 8 out of 10 on the ethics portion to pass that part. Okay, once you've passed that, once you've passed it, you will then be able to take the intake interview and quality review exam. Now, going back to the, on my paper version of my test, going back to this, everybody has this. I'm going to navigate down here to the next test, which is the intake interview and quality review test. And here are my 10 test questions. You'll also notice there's another retest. You've got test A and test B again. Okay, we recommend answering both parts, the first 10 as well as the second 10. And again, you're probably wondering, how am I supposed to know this? Well, we included another link in this email, a link to the intake interview and quality review training slides. So again, what I'd recommend, pull up the paper version of your test, get it out. Click on the link to the intake interview and quality review training on your computer. As you work through your test, use this as a resource to answer your questions. Okay, work through, read through, and use this as you go through and answer your test. Once you've done that, once you have both sets of answers for the test and the retest, come on back here to the website and enter your answers in. Once you've done those two things, you will have access to start your basic or your advanced exam. Again, I'm going to head back to the paper version of your test and navigate to either the basic scenarios or the advanced scenarios. I'm going to just go to the basic scenarios. And you will get a scenario and some questions related to the scenario. This is where you need to start applying your tax knowledge. This is open book. You can use all of your resources to help you here. And you can go through and start answering these questions. Again, mark your answers down on paper. Circle your answers. Go through, work through, answer the questions. All of these, the first couple questions here do not require that you do a tax return. They're simply applying tax law to some scenarios. However, once you get to basic scenario 6, I'm sorry, not 6, hang in there. Once we get to basic scenario 7 for Jacob and Martha Mills, you're going to have some interview notes presenting the scenario. And then you'll see you got some social security cards, you have an intake form, you have some W-2s, some 1099s. You're going to need to do a tax return to get your answers, to be able to answer the questions appropriately. You can see some of these questions here reference the tax return. For instance, how much of their Social Security is taxable? Well, you're not going to know the answer to this unless you do a tax return for them, a full tax return. So how do you do that? Well, again, get the paper version of your test out. That's where all of this information is. Then you're going to need to log into your Practice Lab account. And there's a separate video on getting into your Practice Lab account that you can consult. But you're going to need to head over to let's see, where am I? Head over to your Practice Lab. Okay. And the web address there is vita.taxslayerpro.com. Hit Practice Lab. Remember to enter that universal password, train pro web, all capital letters. Log into your Practice Lab account. Again, this is different. This is different from your certification website. Different username and password. Log in there. Hit go to practice area and start a new 2018 tax return. And then enter a Social Security number. So what you're doing here is you're going to do the tax return for Jacob and Martha Mills. That's why you have Social Security numbers here. You'll enter Jacob's Social Security number 131 into the Social Security. You'll enter 131. And then you can make up you could do 2222, any of the last 4. But you're going to need to do the tax return. You're going to need to use all of the information presented in this scenario, all of the forms to go through and complete a tax return. Only then will you be able to answer the questions related to scenario 7. So there's a couple questions like this. And there's another one for Emily Clark, and I believe there's a couple more. So you'll end up doing a couple tax returns. in order to answer the full basic or advanced scenario test. I'm sorry. So again, get the paper version of your test out. Pull up the TaxSlayer Practice Lab on your computer. Use the information in the test to do a tax return. Then use the information from the tax return to answer the questions on the test. And again, let's see if I can get back up to the table of contents here. Again, in your test, you will see if you're doing the basic scenarios, you're going to have, okay, so you have 8 scenarios to answer there, and only the last 2, 7 and 8, required a tax return. Again, we recommend answering all of the questions in the test. But then you're going to have this retest questions. And again, they're very similar questions. They're just worded a little bit differently. But we recommend answering them, having all of the answers. Because when you get through and you finish all of your basic scenarios, you have all of them answered, you have all of the retest question answered, you're going to go back to the certification website and enter your answers. And remember, the computer program here is going to pull 50% of the questions from test A and 50% from test B, which is considered the retest. So if you have everything already worked out, it's a very easy switch from having them on paper to putting them into the computer. And if you're going for the advanced, follow the same procedure with the advanced scenarios, the advanced test questions, the advanced retest questions. Remember, if you're doing advanced, you do not need to do the basics. You just need to do the advanced. Okay, so one last kind of run through of what all these resources are. And you will find all of this information in the email. Okay, first thing, you have the paper copy of your test. You have this already, Pub 6744. Okay, in the email, you'll find a link to the ethics training, standard of conduct training, Pub 4961. This is electronic only. This is going to help you answer the questions on the ethics test. Okay. Intake, interview, and quality review training. These are going to help you answer the intake, interview, and quality review test questions. This link is in the email. This is electronic only. We have the certification exam website. This is where you enter your answers for the certification exam. You will find this information in the email, the link to this. The web address is linklearncertification.com. Okay, you have your practice lab where you will do the tax returns that you need to do. That's vita.taxslayerpro.com. There's a link to this in the email, and there's a separate YouTube video on creating or getting into your account for the practice lab. Okay, so with all of that information, I hope that you found this helpful. I know it's confusing. I know you have some of this material in hand. Some of it is just electronic. There's a couple different websites. There's multiple usernames and passwords. Hopefully this video distilled some of that and clarified some things. But we do realize that there will be some other questions, so don't hesitate to reach out and ask us if you have questions. So with that, I think I'm going to sign off here. I think I covered everything that I would like to cover, and hope you found this helpful. Thanks for listening and watching.